A lot of hype around cloud computing. Can you give us a good working definition for governments?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as I mentioned in the session, one of the best definitions that I've seen, and one that seems to be adopted by many people, is put out by the U.S. National Institute of NIST. And essentially, what it suggests is that cloud is a new model that allows you to get on-demand access to some resource. That resource could be a server, could be an application, could be a network, etc. That is dynamically provisioned or also can be deprovisioned, and all of that being done in an automated fashion without any interaction with a human being to cause those things to occur.
I was very much struck by something you said in this session, and it was the notion that to the uninitiated, when I thought of the cloud, I thought it was something like buying a chunk of something, whether it's a machine or a service.
Correct.
Your point is, I think, that there are multiple dimensions to how you can use the cloud. In fact, you'd identified 4. And I thought, could you explain those? Because to me, this is a really important thought.
Yeah, I think there are 4 different service models that most people accept around the delivery of a cloud computing-based service. One of those is infrastructure as a service. This is the one that's where I get some sort of a raw server capability or storage or something like that, and then I do with it what I want to do. In the same way you might have rolled in a machine in a traditional sense. Here's your machine, go do it, right? So I'm able to do that one in an on-demand fashion, called infrastructure as a service. The next layer up is something called platform as a service. Platform as a service is where I share some sort of application middleware, whether it's a database management system, some sort of a web server capability, or it could be more application-based, like forms-based tools or development tools of some sort. The next one up, generally speaking, is more focused on certain functions, but it's called software as a service. This is like the ASPs that we had a while back. So, probably some of the better-known one would be things like Salesforce.com. It's a more focused, functionally specific area that I can get access to quickly, configure it. It's got an ability to be configured for my particular needs. And I can do that without having to pay much compute to develop and maintain. The 4th one is less adopted at this point, business process as a service. These are things that are very specific to maybe call centers or other sorts of functions, and certainly there are some of those that are focused on government as well.
So again, to the uninitiated, one thinks about the cloud being better, faster, cheaper. Is there a danger in that conception of it?
Well, I think it is, but like everything in our business, and to some extent in life, whether you see that or not it really comes down to 2 words: it depends. It depends on a lot of factors. It can be cheaper if the cloud meets your requirements, but as we know, there are a lot of complex requirements in the information technology world and in our uses of it, and what our users or our citizens expect as they use it or it's used to provide the services that they need. Sometimes it can certainly be cheaper. Sometimes it can certainly be faster. I think that one's almost always a given. But the cheaper part is certainly tricky. The better part, I'd say generally yes, that's absolutely the case. And I think because of that, over time, cloud is definitely going to survive. Some variation of what we call cloud today, cloud computing, will certainly be in our future as we consume and deliver information technology in the future. Whether that is always going to be cheaper, that part's probably the one that's going to vary more than anything else.
What is the impact of consumerization on the implementation of things like the cloud?
Well, I think the impact of consumerization of IT is that we have a set of users, or in this case, a set of citizens, for example, as well as probably the heads of businesses within government that are more familiar with, or think they're more familiar with information technology. Certainly, they use it more often every day in life than we used to have. With that comes a set of expectations about functionality primarily that they expect to get, and about speed of delivery, I think. And I think those two things, of course, map to potential requirements for cloud that cloud's pretty capable of meeting. At the same time, though, there are a whole set of other requirements that those consumers and citizens certainly expect that they may not think about until something comes up that causes them to think about it. Most notably around things like security, privacy, availability, support, and all those kinds of things that they may not think about. As consumers, of course, we have access to a lot of information technology that's reasonably inexpensive. But we generally, on a personal level, don't have the same requirements with regard to security and privacy, availability and support, etc. And so that's, I think, in some ways it is both a good thing and a challenge for us as providers of cloud computing as a model, in that we have to find the right balance, and we still have to protect that set of requirements that users often don't think about, or citizens often don't think about.
Governments are large, complex organizations. IBM is a large, complex organization. Are there some lessons you would pass on to governments as they try to implement cloud computing from your experience?
Yeah, certainly. One is that I think it's important to realize that the ability of cloud to work well as a model is often a function of the workloads that you choose. Some workloads certainly work better than others. In our own experience, things like development and test are terrific examples of workloads that work well with cloud. Production work, particularly existing, traditional, long-time work, may not be the best choices, especially if you've already done a lot of work to optimize how those things operate. And then there's a bunch of things in between. So certainly that's one of the lessons learned. Another one is, with regard to expectations, is it's important to realize that you have to understand, if you're thinking about moving towards the cloud, where are you coming from? And if you already have a very optimized world, because you've done a good job in delivering that information technology, you may find that while you can certainly get and benefit from the flexibility that cloud can provide you, you may not get that sort of cost savings and cost optimization, because in some sense you've already realized it using more traditional methods and things like perhaps virtualization and other sorts of things like that. Another thing I think that I would say from our own experience is one that I often tell people: you have to remember that cloud is not rocket science, but it is computer science. And by that I mean that when I go to deliver things in the cloud world, once I get them that on-demand aspect, and they're provisioned and available to me, everything at that point is exactly the same as whether I did that all in a more traditional way. And so if I had to care about the location of data from either a privacy or performance or availability standpoint, I still have to care about it. So a lot of the things that I would have to think about in a traditional sense, if it's appropriate to put my application on one side of the world and database on the other side of the world, which may happen with cloud computing, by the way, if I don't have an ability and I don't realize that I need to specify certain things. If that was a bad idea in a traditional world, it's probably going to be a bad idea in the cloud. So.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.